I'll just be broadcasting on Twitch, playing whatever game it is that I'm playing with my community. And I have quite a few believers that watch, moderators even in the chat to like make sure things, usually it doesn't get like toxic or anything in my chat, but we'll just come in, and usually I just let the Holy Spirit lead when it comes to that, because it's the relationships. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. First, it's through love, through patience, kindness, peace, and then conversations happen. They ask like, why are you so happy? Like, what's your story? And like sometimes people will have these conversations of vulnerability with you online that they wouldn't have in person, face to face. And these are people that a lot of times would never show up to a church service. And so being able to just have those conversations of authenticity, share my story, share what I've been through, what Christ has brought me through, and just connect with people from all over the world.
Today on BeyondU, we continue to explore faith, culture, and higher education. And today's guest is our very own John Merritt from OKWU esports. John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to those that are listening? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. My name's John. Everybody calls me Jono online. So if
for those of you on Discord, right?
On Discord or on Twitch or anywhere on the internet.
Okay. We'll get into some of those terms later here for those that may not know what Discord or Twitch.
Yeah, or Twitch is. You probably know what YouTube is, so there's some
familiarity.
I do.
Yeah.
So I'm from Bartlesville, was born here in Bartlesville 25 years ago over at the hospital. And then for some reason, God just wanted me to stay here. And so...
so you're a Barshan is what they would call you, right?
A Barshan. And so I went to Wayside, I went to Central Middle School, and then I went to the mid-high, and then I went to the high school. And then a wonderful individual named Jamie Peterson, our soccer coach, he actually coached my club soccer team in high school and brought me back into soccer. And so he recruited me here to come play soccer. And then I think it was like 2 weeks after that I tore my ACL, like the week after I signed or something. But I came here for ministry, developed a hunger for apologetics at Kanakuk camps, which K-Life was a really big part of me coming to the faith. And then ended up coming to OKWU and discovering my passion, which opened up the doors to where we're at today.
And that's awesome. That's kind of a quick take on your story.
Yeah.
Help us connect the dots for esports. Like when did esports kind of begin in your life's journey?
Yeah. Oh man. So this was probably 2010, I would say. Maybe even earlier. I had a friend, he's actually part of the esports program, who lived across the street from me, named Andrew Miller. And Andrew always had like the latest Xbox or the latest Nintendo. And so I would sneak across the street and go and spend like all day at his house all the time, to the point of getting in trouble sometimes because my parents didn't know where I was at.
That's awesome.
And we'd play Xbox over there. And then also over at On the Rock Ministries here in town, they used to have old Xboxes. And so I'd play Halo, and I would just go over there with YMCA Day Camp. And during the summers, we'd play video games. And so there's some cool intricacies that we can get into later about God, just his plan. Now, that's actually where I work at years and years later, as well as the university. And so, so basically, I developed a passion for video games. And with my background in soccer, was highly competitive. And so it's like, if I'm playing video games, like I'm already being lazy and sitting... being lazy in real life on the computer or whatever. So I might as well put effort into what I'm doing virtually.
Make it a competitive endeavor for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it was really just an escape for me. It was something that like helped me a lot through my parents' divorce and through just the things that happen in life with broken families. And so it became a safe place of refuge for me at an early age. And I got really good at it and joined a pretty good sized YouTube team. And so, yeah.
So unpack for us esports. For those that are listening that, again, maybe you're like me, you have no idea really the details of the world of esports.
Yeah.
You jump into this thing and you mentioned like join a YouTube team, kind of unpack this for us, because I think an understanding of what esports is will help us understand how it's actually a tool to reach the lost.
Yeah.
So go ahead and unpack that for us.
Yeah. So esports, it's online competition. It's like if you were to play, you've probably heard of like FIFA or NBA 2K. Those are probably easier examples for people to swallow that are outside of like the gaming and esports space. Except usually it's like teams working together with like superpowers and special abilities and different guns and stuff to capture points and objectives and work as a team. Or some teams will be driving cars on walls and hitting soccer balls into goals. And so it's think of like a virtual playing field, or like if you've ever played like chess, it's really just at the basis of it, a complex version of chess, where people can go into these different virtual realities and they can compete with one another.
Okay. So, Jono, for those of us that may not understand the breadth and the depth of esports, help us kind of wrap our minds a little bit around just the magnitude of esports, like how big this thing is.
Yeah.
Because there's hundreds of millions of people that tune in, be it just to watch someone else play or to play, the game themselves. Like, help us understand kind of the magnitude of this thing.
I mean, like last semester we had 20 guys in the program, and so like on our match days we'd have like 100 views. Like 100 people would show up and watch our games. We'd have like 6 games a week some nights, and so goodness. Like somewhere between like 80 to like 200 at the most would watch, and that's just like us getting started. Not to imagine where we'd be at in 5 years, but compare that 100 people down at the soccer field or like at a basketball game. Like the numbers are comparable. If you can imagine them like that, but then as it scales.
So talk to us a little bit about that scale, kind of on the higher end of that scale. If there's millions of people that are watching, in what domain and what sphere are they watching? Who's playing these games? Help us just kind of understand a little bit more about that.
No, I mean, like hundreds of thousands of like concurrent people will watch some of these professional matches. Like there's so many people watching online that the stadiums that we built, the modern day coliseums that we built, wouldn't even be able to house the audience that's watching.
Yeah, I mean, one stat was showing that there's like 577 million.
Yeah.
Like over double that which watch a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Watching and tuning into a stream. There's no stadium anywhere that could hold that, let alone multiple stadiums that could handle that kind of capacity.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit more about kind of the breadth of the world of esports. So you've got people playing far and wide, here, near, and everywhere. These streams, they're all taking place online, and people, I'm assuming all over the world, are jumping in to watch.
To watch them, yeah.
Okay.
And there's teams for like different countries as well. Okay. And so there's professional organizations that are just like you'd imagine, like an NFL team that are attached to certain cities for some of these different esports. Like you have like the LA Thieves, which is like a Call of Duty. Well, they have a Call of Duty team, but then they also have other esports teams that are underneath those. And so it's getting to the level of like some of these like franchise spots to play in some of the leagues is like, I don't know what the most expensive is, probably at like 10 million in certain years for certain esports just to play in the league.
Wow. And so that's the pay in. What's the payout in the world of esports?
I mean, so right now they're kind of shifting the model to get into the little bit of the business side. Okay. It was heavily backed, like 80% by sponsorship and venture capitalism. Okay. They're trying to find a more sustainable model, I think, like for the universities and just the next like 5 to 10 years, as I was alluding to. Earlier in our conversation, was that if the collegiate space can really come in and solidify itself, the professional scene is trying to figure out that grounding to be able to attach entertainment, which is esports, to like a pillar of society. Yeah. And so just like we've seen with traditional sports, the collegiate space really puts a concrete anchor into a sport that allows for that desire, that dream of going through high school all the way to college to getting picked up by the NFL. Okay. So
interesting.
We're in very foundational years.
One of the thoughts that just popped into my mind, because you mentioned kind of the correlation between traditional sports and esports there. Yeah. How soon does this maybe jump into the Olympic sphere on an international scale?
They're starting to talk about it. This last year, I didn't follow it super well because there was a lot of things that didn't really resonate with the gaming community. But I'd see people on LinkedIn post about how like they're using the word esports with the Olympics, but it wasn't necessarily like the esports that are top competitive esports that they were showcasing in the Olympics. And so it's starting to cross over.
Wow. Yeah. Again, it's hard to wrap our minds around just how far this thing reaches. And you think about the pandemic in and of itself has thrust so many things online. I mean, the church world, even educational spheres, places that, maybe had an online presence, but now it's really becoming established. And when you think about the far-reaching nature of esports and just how wide this thing goes, it's easy to see where there's great impact potential to be had here.
Yeah, I wrote a paper, I don't remember what year it was, for one of our ministry classes, but it was talking about the different leaps that we've had, like the printing press, like the organ, the different things that have like really like pushed the church forward. Yeah. And like right now, there's a moment in time where we're really blessed to live in it because it's Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And it's like, just being able to talk with people instantaneously across the world for the gospel. Like, we should not take that for granted, but that should make us want to run the race even harder, knowing that this is the time that we were chosen to live in.
Yeah. So as far as getting immersed within the world of esports, you mentioned things like FIFA, which they're not sponsoring us, by the way, for those that are listening. It's probably important to throw that out there. But what are some of the common games that players are jumping into to really get started in this domain?
Yeah, I would say probably the fastest growing one right now is called Valorant. Okay. It's 5 versus 5, and there's one team that's on offense and one team that's on defense, and your objective is to defend the different sites, the different points, and to be able to use your different superpowers and abilities, and using like the money to buy each other different items and stuff, so that like one team can defend while the other team tries to capture the objective, basically. Okay. And so that's probably the most popular one. We have a Valorant team, we have a Rocket League team, and we also have players that are here for Super Smash Brothers, which is like Nintendo, like Mario and stuff, which where they're fighting.
So within the OKWU esports team, there's like sub teams where I'm assuming that those that are on each sub team are kind of like specialists within that. Okay.
Yeah. So Rocket League, as I was explaining, it's the game with like cars. Okay. And it's literally soccer, but with remote control cars, basically.
That's awesome.
And so that doesn't compare anywhere close to Valorant at all. It's completely different. And so usually guys, unless they're like super crazy good, they can't transfer those skills because they're just totally different. It would be like having a baseball player try to start on your basketball team. It'd be that much of a difference.
Man, that's such a helpful picture that you described for those of us, again, that are still trying to connect the dots here. So you've really had a progression within the world of esports, because you start out as just casually playing at your friend's house, and then you jump into playing, and you're technically a professional, right, within esports?
I guess, yeah. If
you don't have to be humble here. It's all good. You can be honest with us.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like, I guess when you're doing it full time, or you have companies that sponsor, I guess you could say you're a professional. I'm not like a professional in terms of like competing and stuff. I'm more of an influencer / content creator. Okay. Which has been like the other side of this, which is how we reach people for the gospel.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that side of esports.
So there's broadcast, the numbers are, we were talking about this earlier, it's like 550 million or something like that are projected to watch
bigger
online.
Than the Super Bowl. People watching one of the world's biggest games on any given stream, you have hundreds of millions of people watching. That's insane.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's tons of people that will flock to what I was talking about earlier, which is Twitch, where they'll go on YouTube as well. Most of the live streams and broadcasts are on Twitch. They kind of dominate the market right now for online gaming and broadcasting. But people will come and they'll watch, and then they'll sit there and they'll talk in like a live chat, just like if during COVID your church was like broadcasting their service. You can have people in like the Facebook chat that are talking there alongside the live stream that's going on. It's just like that. People will watch inside the game. You'll have a camera on that person, and then there's a live chat where you can interact with people instantaneously.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So people, when we talk about the streamers or the viewers, it's literally a platform where people can just hop online and watch someone else play a video game. And we're talking hundreds of millions of people
are doing
that do this. Okay. So you currently stream, or what?
Kind of. I've been taking a break from it in this last season. It's just been a really big season of transition.
You just became a dad.
Just became a dad. And so there's been a lot that's been happening. Recently, God Squad Church, they just announced that I'm one of their 3 digital missionaries that they're choosing to support. And so I've been getting back into broadcasting as I've taken a break for the last couple of months. And so that's been only within this last week. So.
Yeah, man, that's huge. So help me wrap my mind around this. Conversations that we've shared before leading up to this conversation, we talk about how esports, it differs from traditional sports in a lot of ways, which, by the way, for those that are listening, this is a scholarshiped gig. Like, there's real money to be had here, real opportunity. It's not just playing video games casually. Like, there's real money at stake here. But one of the differing factors from like a traditional sport, you mentioned soccer, which you play, basketball, baseball, any sport that you might commonly think of, where teams would have to travel to meet with one another for competition. In the world of esports, you do it all online, and your competitions are literally in your own space. And you use a term like digital missionary. Let's connect this conversation of esports to the church, because I think that it is a catalyst for reaching the lost. Talk to us a little bit about what a digital missionary looks like. How do you go about that, man?
Yeah. No, I mean, so think of it as like a completely different culture. I mean, there's these things called emotes, which are close to like emojis, like on your phone, and they have different like hidden meanings and stuff behind them. Like one of them's called Kappa, and it means sarcasm. And so there's like a whole culture behind this. Yeah. And so imagine you're going into a foreign nation where a lot of people, they have their preconceived notions about the church. Some of them have church hurt. Some of them are Christians even on there. Yeah. And people from all sorts of different belief systems and walks of life that normally you wouldn't see hanging out within the traditional church context. And so I'll just be broadcasting on Twitch, playing whatever game it is that I'm playing with my community. And I have quite a few believers that watch, moderators even in the chat to like make sure things, usually it doesn't get like toxic or anything in my chat. But in some chats it can get toxic. And so people will just come in, and usually I just let the Holy Spirit lead when it comes to that, because it's the relationships. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. For sure. And just with the state of the world right now, it's not the most popular thing to be a Christian, or Christianity is not perceived as like, it's not in the hottest of light that it's been in past years, you know? And so usually I just let the Holy Spirit lead in that relationship. And it's just first, it's through love, through patience, kindness, peace. And then conversations happen. They ask like, why are you so happy? Like, what's your story? And like sometimes people will have these conversations of vulnerability with you online that they wouldn't have in person, face to face. And these are people that a lot of times would never show up to a church service. And so being able to just have those conversations of authenticity, share my story, share what I've been through, what Christ has brought me through, and just connect with people from all over the world. I have people from Australia that watch my broadcast every single day, people in Germany at the same time, people in Canada, people in the Middle East. Usually I don't have any people that are like Far East or like up in Russia, because there's not a lot of the time difference, really.
For sure.
With things kind of affect stuff. But
So you mentioned within this domain there's a lot of toxicity.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah. I think it's because this has become the thing that people ran away to. This is like people's escape, that they wanted to get away from whatever was going on in their life. Right. And this is the thing that this is their safe space. Yeah. And so they're very protective of it. Whenever there's a game developer that makes a game that, is kind of taking advantage of the customer, it's like a poorly released product, people get really mad in the gaming space. Yeah. And I think it's because there's a lot of people that have been hurt in person, in the real world. And this is where they go to. Yeah.
You had mentioned in a prior conversation that we'd shared that esports is in many ways a factor in your life that has helped to overcome some depression and anxiety, and not to steal the power of sharing your story for you. I wonder if you might share, how has esports maybe combated some of that toxicity, even though it prevails in that domain. Yeah. How has it also been used as a remedy for some of the toxicity as well?
No, just having relationships with people online. Some of my deepest relationships are with people that I've known online. And being able to spend those late night hours, like 2 or 3 in the morning, and us playing video games together and just talking about life. Because it really does, it pulls away the the pressure that a lot of people face, and especially in this generation with like just talking and having face-to-face conversations, the anxieties and stuff aren't necessarily there. So so people might think, or at least be tempted to assume, that esports is like an isolated sort of experience where you're by yourself and you're playing a game, but you've mentioned like millions of people are viewing and streaming, and also that you can have relationships. Like, how do you maintain relationships within the domain of esports? I mean, it's like a consistent, imagine you hang out with someone every single day for 2 to 3 hours in the afternoon. Like, you're going to be pretty good friends with that person.
For sure.
I don't think there's anybody in person other than my wife that I spend, that much time with. But there's people that, like, if you game together, or like you get on and you're raiding in the game you're playing together, it just becomes a consistent habit of like, this is what I'm doing after work or whatever. Yeah. And so you're building relationships with people in a consistent way over time that builds faster than usually in-person relationships do.
For sure. And you're playing this game together. And so in one way you're competing with one another, but yet builds using that. That's a great word to use to describe what you're doing. So let's talk about the specifics, the nitty-gritty of esports as evangelism, because building relationships is really at the core of evangelism. I mean, there's sometimes when you're just out you think of people on the streets that are, proselytizing but esports, knowing that it has the propensity for people to build relationships, how do you leverage that for a kingdom purpose and a kingdom advancement?
Yeah, no, I mean, having institutions in places like Oklahoma Wesleyan, where like these students that like, some of them have probably never heard the gospel or gone to church, like back home, wherever
now
they're
they have to go to chapel twice a week.
Now they have to go to chapel twice a week. But it's creating a space and structure and infrastructure for really like a lot of people that have been forgotten. And not everybody. I mean, you have people that would be seen as like popular that play esports. Pretty much everybody plays esports. There's over 3 billion gamers in the world. But really, like, there is a lot of people too that like, they don't have this type of structure that supports them and helps them to set healthy boundaries. It teaches them life skills and lessons to propel them into the future. And so having places like Oklahoma Wesleyan, like On the Rock Ministries, that believe in the hard truths of the gospel, but are going to come alongside and leave the 99, because for the longest time, the gaming community was like, this is Mountain Dew Doritos, and you're in your mom's basement. And I love Mountain Dew and Doritos, but
who doesn't, right?
Yeah. And so there wasn't a good picture that was painted behind gamers. But like, one of my students, Lennon from the Dominican Republic, he was the salutatorian in his class, 4.0 student.
Wow.
Played for the national team for the entire country for the Dominican for a while. And so like, there's lots of gifted individuals that like, this is where their brain just like works in this fantastic way that, you can't really witness any way else. So being able to create avenues and methods of success and show them that Christ loves them and bring them into a space like this is, it's essential.
Well, and at the heart of kind of our role as people that are ambassadors for the kingdom, those that have claimed Jesus to be Lord and Savior, we see in Scripture that the world will know us by the way that we love one another, that they'll know that we belong to Jesus. And esports being a tool of how to love someone, that reach of love through esports, like the love of Jesus through esports, goes so far. I mean, you mentioned a student from the Dominican. Where do you get most of your players? Like, where are these guys coming from, or gals? Because it's probably important to not assume that it's just guys playing, because there's probably a lot of females. Where are you finding students far and wide?
I mean, really, it's just been word of mouth. Since it's so brand new, there's not like camps and like recruiting websites and all sorts of things that are really built out for it yet. And so really it's just been the Wild West of like, God connect me with this person, open this door to this person, this person. And so I think it's going to start to develop more and more as players are really starting to see the collegiate space as a viable path to pro. Right now there's the amateur scene, and the collegiate space is starting to kind of step into that. In the collegiate space, hopefully if the collegiate space makes the right calls in the next 5 years, it'll really come in kind of like an NCAA type of infrastructure. And it will make it possible for students to kind of go through the grassroots, through high school, because there's over 100 high school esports teams in Oklahoma alone.
Oh my goodness.
That compete in a league together called OESL. And so I think it's 100 or close.
Are they playing the same games that we play?
Valorant, Overwatch. And so being able to connect with those high schools has been another way, to find students to try out for our teams.
So for those of you listening online that might have a high schooler or be a high schooler yourself, and you play these games, maybe
see if your high school has a team. Or just come and visit and see what's happening here. It's really crazy, because like looking back at all the times that I would use video games as an escape and lock myself in my room for 20 hours a day or whatever, it's like, man, if I don't think I could have handled the amazing things that God's done over the last 10 years if he would have shown me just a glimpse of everything that he's doing in esports. So
let's talk about that. What is God doing in esports right now?
And
maybe even, where do you sense that this thing is going?
100%. We had a really, really awesome season this last year with a lot of really highly competitive teams. And we had a player that got baptized a few weeks ago. I mean, they were with you on stage in the chapel, and it really just took me back to like the heart of it. It's like, man, God, you're the one that opened all the doors for this program to start. And it's like, winning is great, but like seeing souls proclaim Jesus and ushering players and students into the kingdom, that's where it's got to be at, first and foremost. And so, we've had 2 players come to faith since the program started, which has been pretty cool.
Praise God. That's awesome.
One getting baptized as well recently, Josh. And so it's just been, it's awesome to see that and just be able to be a fraction of a part of someone's story like that, And you know what?
is so beautiful about that is that hearing these testimonies of students that are finding the Lord and growing in likeness in their journey with him, it's a beautiful reminder that God can take anything and make it a sacred space. Yeah. God can take the digital world of esports and make it sacred. Yeah. And it's cool to know that there's people like you that are coaching in these spheres and really honoring that space and using it as a tool of evangelism. What would you say for you as a coach? Let's kind of put your coaching hat on here for a moment. What have been some of the challenges for you in trying to not only coach your athletes and their growing proficiency within their particular game, but helping them develop as people?
No, I mean, I was telling one of my friends this semester has been a long semester of having hard conversations about how to honor God with your choices, and being patient as we've been waiting. The program's newer, and so there's a lot of things that have been developing. And so,
how old is the program, by the way?
It's technically about 3 years. Okay. But the first year we started at like really close to the beginning of the semester, like midsummer. And so I wouldn't really count the full year of that. It was more of like a learning how to do it.
So we'll say like two and a half years here at OKWU.
Probably. Okay. Just having conversation. It's not as like mystical as it probably seems. It's a lot of what you'd see at like the other sports teams. Like a student is going through something, and you pull them aside to your office and talk with them, and just have a conversation about like, what does Scripture say? Like you're going through this situation. This is what the Word of God says. This is the truth. This is how you get through this next season that's stressing you out. So it's not as like majestic or magical as you would imagine. It's more in line with what a soccer coach would have conversation wise with players, taking them out to breakfast, going to coffee, spending time in the Word together. All of last semester we had a captain's Bible study where we'd go meet at Jude's Coffee here in town at 6:30 in the morning every Monday. And so we started doing a proverb and a parable, and then each of the guys would just go around and talk about like, this is what this is speaking, and like this is how like I feel like I could apply this to my life. That's what it's about.
That's beautiful. And when we think about the kingdom of heaven and you think of the scope of esports being hundreds of millions of people, the math function of the kingdom of heaven is not addition, it's multiplication. And I think about you pouring into your team captains here. Then they pour into those that they're streaming. Like, you can see where esports really can be a tool of discipleship and evangelism within the kingdom. Man, like, talk to us a little bit about like how you see looking ahead. We're talking about what was and what is. Let's look ahead. What are some ways that esports can continue to push the ball down the field, if you will? Maybe the wrong sport analogy here for esports. But down the field for the kingdom of Jesus, to advance this thing even further through a digital space.
I would kind of couple esports with like the gaming space and the influencer space. There's a lot of people around the time of 2016, believers that are 10, 20 years my senior in the faith, that God just laid the same desire on their heart to really reach the next generation, because this is where they're at. And so just like Paul talks about, we're called to reach to the Jews. I was a Jew so that I might save some, and to the Gentiles. And so it's like, let's reach this next generation where they're at. And so to the gamers, I'm a gamer, and so that I might save some. And so really being able to be all things to all people and to reach this next generation. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to become increasingly less popular to be a Christian. But if we can innovate in these spaces, just like we've seen the church do, just throughout the centuries, really this is the first time in human history where you can share the gospel instantaneously with someone on the other side of the world. And so gaming is just a vehicle through which we do that. And so being able to utilize the online broadcasting and streaming space to share the gospel with someone that's in a nation that it's not always heard there.
No, that's so beautiful. And that, I think it's a perfect picture of what God is really trying to have us be a part of, is that we can go far and wide, here, there, and everywhere. One of your local ministry outlets within esports here is here in Bartlesville, a place called On the Rock. Talk to us a little bit about that partnership that you have with them and how God is opening that door of ministry to just reach even more people.
100%. No, so I mentioned like the first place that I played Halo 2 at was at On the Rock. And so this was, I don't even know when Halo 2 was released, but I would go there and I would eat donuts and drink Starbucks coffee and I would play video games there.
No
and then
more
I'd go
Mountain Dew and Doritos.
No, yeah. Was a little bit healthier with my decisions during those years.
Fair enough.
And then I'd go over to the soccer fields and have soccer practice and get sick. But here we are 15 probably years later now. And God in his sovereignty has just connected me with Ken Dossett over there, the founder of On the Rock. And Ken's whole thing is mousetrap theology. Let's set a piece of cheese that's super duper good and then catch them for the gospel.
I love it.
And that's what it's about is, being able to show that like gaming isn't of the devil. Like this is something that Christ can redeem. He's a redeemer of culture.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And so seeing him come into these spaces and transform the next generation through it's been really cool to see at the local level, because this has been something that like I've had my online virtual friends and pastors, guys at Elevation Church, at Life Church, and just all over the states that I've gotten connected with. But to see the amount of support on the local level is just, I can't explain it other than like a miracle of God.
Yeah.
It's so many doors open outside of my control. And so over there at On the Rock, Ken's wanting to get a youth esports team going.
Okay.
And so they have this incredible building that Ken was praying for like 27 years ago, I believe.
Wow.
And he was saying, like, I claimed this building for the Lord years and years ago. And he ended up not getting that building. And, like, everything fell through up until recently the building was given to him. And over $2 million were fundraised for this space.
$2 million.
So
wow.
They've completely redone this building that was built in the 1920s, the old creamery building. And, we have limited space here. We're growing a lot as a university, and it's good that we're maximizing the space we have. It's a great problem to have.
Yeah.
And so as I'm bringing these players in, it's like, man, like I really want to be able to expand this and have more space for more students to come on campus and be a part of our program. And I was over there last year with Ken right before the semester was about to start, and he's like, what kind of esports gear and machine should I get, all this stuff? And he's telling me his budget and stuff. And I just had this moment where I feel like the Holy Spirit just hit me. And it was like, you guys have the space. We don't really have a whole lot of space on campus, but we do have the gear and you guys don't have the gear. What if we just had a partnership together because we both have a heart for reaching the next generation for Jesus?
That's a divine collision there. That's so awesome.
And so that's how that's fallen into place. And it's been a journey of being patient. Construction and stuff has taken a lot longer than we thought. But we finally started moving stuff over there recently, and I'm just excited to see, because this is the town that I'm from, and to see something like this that's first being innovated by Christians to create this space for the next generation. It's just so amazing.
Right here in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. It's wild. And to think of the opportunity that in that partnership between On the Rock and OKWU, it allows our Oklahoma Wesleyan esports players to not only have a digital impact in their sphere of influence, but now to have an impact in person, because there's younger kids that are coming behind them, kind of learning the ropes. What would you say, like what piece of advice would you give to a younger individual that maybe is wanting to jump in the world of esports and really get, immersed in this world? What advice would you give them?
I think the biggest thing is seek first his kingdom, and all this will be added. And that's really been something that, this was honestly a dream that like died a long time ago. When Jamie brought me back to play soccer, I didn't think I was going to tear my ACL twice. And my trajectory was just focused on like I was just going to go into ministry and was going to go. I was looking really heavily up at the Ransom Church for a while. I was thinking about going up there with them as I was about to graduate, and I've been broadcasting, but it was really just after like seeking Jesus hardcore that like everything else kind of fell to the side, and then one door after another started to open, and it was totally outside of my control to where I was able to start working in esports and grow my broadcast where that was fruitful. So really just seeking first his kingdom, being willing to serve, I think, as well. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And so building relationships with people in an authentic way, learning to love people and just have conversations with them, asking people questions. I don't remember who it was, if it was a chapel speaker or if it was a pastor that I'd heard, but for the longest time, like before I was a believer especially, it was like about me and like my dreams and stuff. But it wasn't until that pastor came and spoke, and he's like, whenever you're like talking with people, like ask them questions. They're other people's like favorite. That's it. Who do you know the most about? You know the most about yourself. So being able to like learn to love people has really been what's like opened up doors. And I mean, that's love God and love others. So
no, I love that, because those few pieces of advice that you just gave us have very little to do with the actual
with esports
competency that's needed for esports.
Yeah.
But it's about leveraging the domain that God's put you in.
Yeah.
And I think that there might be some that would be listening right now that are like, listen, God has me right here for a season and I have no idea what to do with it, like how to leverage my influence where God has me. And yet we see a tool like esports that God has used to reach so many. So, just like any other sport, there's, sportsmanship that's important. And so within the domain of esports, what does esportsmanship look like? And how does that impact a team culture as you're trying to build it?
Yeah, no. It doesn't matter how good you are at the video game. If you have too much pride and too much ego, you're never going to be able to win a match and go as far as you possibly could. I think this specifically is a unique space because players tend to put their identity in it more. And so there's a lot of identity conversations that we get to have because when you're channeling all your focus into something, your entire being into it, whenever you have a moment of frustration, what's truly on the inside is going to come out. And so being able to step back and realize hey, I'm created in God's image. My performance in this one match or this one round isn't what defines my worth as a person. But since it's become so many people's escape and it's their one thing that they have that they so intently focus on, being able to have those conversations about identity and making sure that your headspace is in the right place, you're not idolizing this thing, I think is the most essential thing to building a team that's going to succeed the long run. And not break apart just after one match or one season.
Yeah. So. And again, that has very little to do with the actual competency of the game. That, it goes beyond that. So for the student that's out there that's now realizing playing at the collegiate level and actually getting a scholarship is possible, talk to us about what you are looking for in students that you're recruiting to be a part of your program.
Yeah. I'm looking for players that first and foremost want to grow as a person.
Yeah.
There's not a shortage of players that are high ranked in esports because there's so many kids that are playing it nowadays. But when you find someone that's truly introspective and is how can I become a better person? And how can I grow as an individual? Those are the types of players that I would choose any day.
Yeah.
And so finding players like that is really what I'm going forward looking for into this next season.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubt God's going to send them your way. Again, all for the sake of advancing the kingdom of Jesus.
Yeah.
So, Jono, I've got some questions here for you. They're a little bit more lighthearted here, okay. But just to get to know you a little bit better. What's your favorite video game?
My favorite video game? That's a tough one. There's a game called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And it's
say that again for me.
Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay, good deal.
It's probably the best portrayal of someone losing themselves and falling, but then a beautiful redemption story.
Okay.
Basically you're this character who you think is just a random mercenary, but you find out that he was actually the baddest Sith Lord, the worst guy in the galaxy. Okay. But he loses his memory and then goes on this massive journey to just redemption and ends up saving the galaxy. And so
Alrighty.
I'm a huge sucker for redemption stories.
You big Star Wars fan too, I take it?
I used to be, but then they released the sequels and I just...
Not a fan? Fair enough. So I'm curious, your perspective on all things esports.
Yeah.
What retro video game has the best replay value?
Golly. I don't really play a whole lot of retro video games, to be honest.
Fair enough.
I used to play... No, I don't even know the oldest video game that Pokemon, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, probably Pokemon, if you'd even consider that retro.
It is retro. I don't know. I mean, is it a current game now?
It is now. They just continue to make new generations of it. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
I think the retro video game I'm most familiar with is Mario Kart, and Rainbow Road freaks me out every time I play it.
It's anxiety right there.
It is. It's anxiety riddled for me. So let's jump to your next question here.
Okay.
Favorite energy drink?
What one
keeps you going in the world of esports?
So I'm sponsored by
nice.
the best coffee company in gaming called madrinascoffee.com.
Okay.
They've sent me my coffee every month for the last, I think, 4 years now.
Okay.
And so every month they just fill me up with coffee.
How much coffee does it take to keep Jono going? Especially now that you're a new dad.
Yeah. Now that I'm a new dad, I actually drink less because if I drank as much as I probably needed, I would get sick.
Okay.
So yeah, no, Madrina's coffee is what I drink all the time.
Okay, Madrinas, and they're sponsoring you. So
Yep.
For those that are listening,
Code Jano for 20% off.
Hey,
MadrinasCoffee.com.
say that again real fast, not fast actually, real slow, so people can put that in.
Madrinas, MADRINAS, MadrinasCoffee.com, and then use code Jano for 20% off.
There you go, 20% off.
It's pretty good.
People didn't know that they come to the podcast today and get a discount. So you're an OKWU student, or an alum rather.
Yep.
What was your favorite OKWU class, or maybe your favorite professor?
Man, that's tough because we have such good ministry professors. I don't know that I could choose one. I mean, I spent hours in Dr. Mike's office just talking about life and stories, and just hearing lots and lots of just ways to navigate through tough situations as a student and in life. But I've also spent so much time with JVK as well, and JVK's got an incredible gift for taking complex things and communicating them at the level that younger ministry students are at, that it's just one of a kind. I mean, probably, I don't know that I could choose between our ministry professors.
Fair enough. We won't ask you to maybe select your favorite, but I love that you touch on the fact that our faculty here at OKWU, they spend time with students beyond the class. And that definitely does change lives. It goes beyond the classroom for sure. Okay, last question here. You ready for this?
Uh-oh.
If you could be a professional athlete in any other sport, beyond esports,
okay,
what sport would you choose?
That's so challenging. Probably golf, because it seems to be the most relaxing out of all of them in your free time. I would want to say soccer, but I mean, to keep up with like the professional athletes,
you've already torn your ACL twice, so you don't want to. Want to do that again.
I don't know that I would ever want to be a professional athlete. The perks of being a professional athlete, being financially just blessed beyond belief, would be incredible. But other than that, I don't know that I want to sprint all the time every day.
Fair enough. Golf seems like a safe option on that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the next thing for you after esports.
Oh man,
who knows? Jono, thank you. Thanks for your time today, and thanks for opening our understanding to not just what esports is, but how it can be used as a tool to advance the kingdom of Jesus.
Yeah.
And again, for those that are listening, I think that oftentimes we miss the fact that God can use something that we would deem maybe ordinary. He can make it a very sacred thing. Yeah. And so thanks for sharing with us how God is using even your own influence to reach those that are far from Him.